She said, I can't provide her with the sense, tell him what he does. Yeah, they're both mother's side. I found that most.
Where's Cynthia? Is she gonna come out? Wait, let me find out something. Cynthia, you ready? Okay. I'm ready.
Okay,
Motion by Bashara. I want to do this first. So, you know what? Really, he doesn't need to have a seat. Yeah, just let him have a seat over in the box. I'm ready. I'm going to call Mr. Valente's case in connection with this. Mr. Bashara, you're not a party to this, even though it relates to you.
Okay.
Just let him stay in the courtroom now.
Okay.
Okay, very good. Are you ready, Madam Clerk?
This is case number 13-8320. The people versus Robert Bashara.
And Dean Valente. I'm sorry.
In regards to Dean Valente.
Appearances for the record.
Good morning, Your Honor. Henry Sharp, appearing on behalf of Dean Valente. In fact, this is a sub-caption to the case, and we caption it as In Re Dean Valente Esquire.
Is he present?
He is not present.
Okay, very good. But this is your, Counselor.
Good morning, Your Honor. Mark Kindling on behalf of the people.
Very good. This is your motion.
I'll be very brief, Your Honor. Mr. Valente was a friend and personal lawyer for Mr. Bashara for a number of years. They both lived in the Grosse Pointe area. Their parents knew each other, and they both belonged to the Rotary Club. Back in October, before and during the time that Mr. Bashara was in custody, Mr. Valente was managing a number of Mr. Bashara's properties and other financial matters. On October 29th of last year, Grosse Pointe Police and investigators from the Wayne County Prosecutor's offices appeared unannounced at Mr. Valente's house. What's clear, this is very key to the case, is that they were armed with both a subpoena for records and with a search warrant. When they came to Mr. Valente's house, which is also his law office, his children, including one of his special needs children, had just left for school. There were approximately between 10 and 20 officers that arrived at his house and served Mr. Valente with a subpoena for records regarding Mr. Bashara. When Mr. Valente asked to call a lawyer, we're associated.
Yes.
The officer said, "You're not going to comply with the request for the subpoena. We're serving you with a search warrant." Had him sit down.
I'm sorry. I can't hear. Go ahead.
Had him sit down and went through his entire house. And during that time, they went into the children's rooms. They went throughout the house, and they collected approximately 3 boxes of materials and records and attorney files that they removed from the house pursuant to the search warrant. They did not inventory those items and property in front of Mr. Valente, which they're required to do by statute. They boxed everything and they took it away. Including in those boxes were just newspapers that had Bashara articles in it. They took writings from Mr. Bashara to Mr. Valente and others, and they took work product from Mr. Valente's files. Also, they took all the files, all the legal files that Mr. Valente had regarding Bashara properties. Thereafter, we met with with Judge Michael Hathaway, who had
Michael
signed.
Hathaway.
Yeah, they went to Michael Hathaway to get a search warrant. This case was already in front of him. This is October 29th of last year. The prosecutor's office went to Michael Hathaway to get a search warrant, and that was the search. And so we went to Judge Hathaway to inquire about these documents, and worked out an agreement at that time that in fact that the materials, the documents, the documents and records and files would all be separated into 3 different boxes. Box number 1. Box number 1 Mr. Valente and I went up to the prosecutor's office. They unsealed these boxes, Mr. Valente and I spent a couple hours going through these boxes, putting them into three separate categories. Box number 1 was any documents or writings that could possibly be considered to be privileged or work product, and protected under Mr. Valente's and Mr. Bashara's constitutional rights. The second box was that of attorney
Now, wait a
files.
minute. Now, these writings that were privileged were between Mr. Valente and Mr. Bashara, or they were being held by Mr. Valente,
Yes.
but they were authored by Mr. Bashara.
Some of them.
Some of them. Okay.
Some of them. They were a combination of what would be called work product, some of it privileged, others just writings by Mr. Bashara.
Okay.
And I believe some would have been writings by Mr. Valente.
Okay.
That was box number 1.
Okay. Box number 2.
Okay, box number 2 would have been attorney files, client files relative to different properties that Mr. Bashara owned that Mr. Valente was managing or was conducting some type of legal service for Mr. Bashara to preserve his assets before and after his arrest. Box number 3 was a box that we had decided was not relevant in any way, but just part of this fishing expedition and just just throwing stuff, collecting stuff that had nothing to do with this case. The agreement that we had, that I believe that we had, and I can document it in terms of some of the communications between the parties, was that box number 1, which was the box that contained the privilege, would be reviewed by a master appointed by Judge Hathaway.
Well, let me ask you this. Was this agreed upon between yourself and the prosecution to have this master to come in?
Yes, and Judge Hathaway participated. And in fact, Judge Hathaway, and I think even before we met with Judge Hathaway, I had spoken with Mr. Moran, and he agreed that based upon what we were dealing with, and that's the raid of an attorney's office and the possible consequences and constitutional issues, that a master should be appointed. So I think we all walked into this meeting with Judge Hathaway, knowing that in terms of at least some of the materials, that a master would have to be appointed. And in fact, we...
So you all agreed, the parties agreed on having a master appointed?
That's correct.
Okay.
And the master was supposed to review box number 1 and box number 3.
Now, the master that was appointed is Gene Stimpy,
Right,
a retired judge.
right. And in fact, just so we get this straight, the prosecutor and I agreed on 3 names. Judge Stepien was not one of the three names that Judge Hathaway said, give us 3 names and I'll pick one of the 3 people.
And who were the 3 people?
Mr. Hiddelberg.
So wait a minute. So, well, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it does. I'm just giving the court the
Okay,
history.
so there's 3 names. You picked 3 names and he picked 3 names.
No, we agreed on 3 names.
You, the 2 of you.
Yes.
So how did Gene Stimpian's name come?
Judge Hathaway did not accept our recommendations and in fact appointed Judge Stempian on his own. After he asked us for 3 names, he said, agree on 3 names, give it to me and I'll appoint one of the people, and he appointed retired Judge Stempian. I don't understand the process, but I'm just giving the court the history.
Okay, and that was not one of the 3 people that you agreed
No.
on?
But it was fine. I mean, it was. I didn't object to it, and I still haven't. But Judge Stempian was supposed to review boxes number 1, which is the work product and privileged materials, and also box number 3. We're here today because of box number 2. Because when we went through the materials, we agreed that box number 2 involved files, client files that were not privileged, but was somewhat relevant to Mr. Bashara in terms of his properties. We agreed that the master would not have to go through box 2, and that was and our agreement was that the prosecutor would review box number 2 with the files. If there was anything that was relevant to them in any type of way, they could make copies and return the originals to us. And in fact, we're here today because the fact is that now the prosecutor is telling us, and their position is, look, you come up to our offices, you copy what you want from your files, and we'll retain the originals until the end of this case. Those files, there's several files in there that have a very minimal effect on anything, a very collateral. There's 2 files that they have. One file, which they referenced in their response, was the Ramsey file. And Mr. Ramsey, not unknown to us at the time, became a witness in this prosecution. Mr. Ramsey was a tenant of Mr. Bashara, and he was evicted because he destroyed the apartment, and in fact agreed to a consent judgment to leave the premises. And in fact, the first time Mr. Valente learned of any connection was when they were at the district court for the landlord-tenant proceedings, for the termination proceedings, when a detective from the prosecutor's office, an investigator, came to the court and informed Mr. Valente that Mr. Ramsey was a potential witness in this prosecution. The second file that we're aware of is regarding.
And this is out of box number 2.
Out of box number 2, and there was also a file relative to Ms. Gillette, who was also a witness in this case, who had borrowed some money from Mr. Bashara's mother and had defaulted on that loan, and there was some proceedings. Interesting enough, though, is that Ms. Gillette was represented by Durad Elder, who also had all the documents, who has all the documents, because he was the attorney for Ms. Gillette during his proceedings. So those documents they could have gotten from Ms. Gillette's attorney. Bottom line, though, is that there was our understanding, and it was in writing, that in fact that this was 2 months ago that we had this meeting, that in that box of files that the prosecutor's office could copy what they want and return the originals to Mr. Valente.
Okay. This is a situation. I'm going to let Mr. Henderline respond. Go ahead, sir.
Can I just say one?
No, Henderline.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Shard is correct in that the search warrant was served on October 29th. A subpoena was prepared out of professional courtesy. The subpoena was refused and withdrawn, and that's why the search warrant was there.
Let's back up a little bit. When was the subpoena? Made out to Mr. Valente? When you said the subpoena was and it was refused.
The subpoena, and
When?
it was delivered to him on the 29th, on the same day.
Of
And
what?
Of October. It was delivered to him on October 29th, and he looked at it and said, I'm sorry, Mr. Valente refused the subpoena for whatever reason. He may have wanted counsel, I don't know. If we need that testimony, Mr. Valente can take a stand, and I can call officers as well to get what they said. But the people also prepared a search warrant because investigators had probable cause to believe that
Probable cause based upon what, sir?
based on phone calls that were recorded from the jail and prison
Okay.
and other communications.
Okay, because I'm just looking at your response.
Yes.
And what is ironic is that according to your response, you've indicated that the search warrant was based upon writings that Mr. Bashara had stated that he had and wanted them delivered to Mr. Valente. But what's so surprising is that these conversations, according to your motion, were dated on March 9th, 2013, May 20th, 2012, I know that's an error, that had to be a typo, and August 27, 2013. Now, so I'm trying to understand this. Your affiant or bases this search warrant on material that was discovered 7 months previous, and you wait on it for 7 months, then you execute a search warrant?
Your Honor, the last call upon which this was based.
That's not, I didn't ask the last call. In your motion, okay, your response, it says on page 3, on March 9th, in call 136283161, Mr. Bashara and Mr. Felician, how do you spell? Falsinelli discussed delivering non-legal papers to Dean Valenti to be sent to Mr. Bashir as legal men. Okay. They listened to the call. Now, and I think you're right. We're going to have an evidentiary hearing. Because I don't know, but I thought that when you listen to the call, it's there or about the same time the call is made. It's not 5 months later that you get the call. Second, on May 20th, Mr. Bashara talks to Mr. Fasolini. If Dean gave you any of my writings, he follow up, there's a lot of writings I gave DB. Some of them I just want you to hold on to, have nothing to do with anything, and others. So then there's another call that's on August 27, 2013. And then the final call is on October 6, 2013. So my question is, it's my understanding that this search warrant was based upon these calls that had been made 5 months.
Yikes, okay. Well,